Baroness Bennett of Manor Castle.
My Lords, it's a pleasure to follow the Noble Baroness Lady Tyler and support both her tribute to NHS staff and question about pay. I begin with a very important question of democracy affecting the operations of your Lordship's House and the conduct of this debate. I refer to an article published yesterday in the Huffington Post titled "Consultants Deloitte's Paid to Draft Ministers' Parliamentary Answers on Test and Trace." It reports on a series of contracts worth £323 million to support the Department of Health and Social Care and the National Testing Programme, contracts held by the consultant Deloitte. The Huffington Post report says that the contracts include help provided with public relations and communications with a requirement to, quote, draft and respond to parliamentary questions, freedom of information requests, media queries and other reactive requests, close quote, and to take support lines and Q&As in anticipation of queries. So my question to the Noble Lord the Minister is simple. Does he consider this appropriate? Should a private contractor be drafting and providing ministerial answers at all? Particularly, should a private contractor be drafting ministerial answers on work that it is engaged in, especially when it's marking its own homework, Deloitte drafting answers for the government about the work of Deloitte? And is it achieving results in drafting questions, answers to questions similar to the disastrous outcomes of the test and trace? I ask that specifically given that my honourable friend, the member for Brighton Pavilion, is still waiting for an answer to a written question in the other place, numbered 149740, which names Deloitte, that was tabled on the 5th of February about the work of test and trace in her constituency. Will the government next be relying on Heathrow Airport to draft answers on aviation, or China General Nuclear Power Group in supplying answers on energy policy, or Bayer giving the ministerial view on GMO crops? Today's debate is not focused on test and trace specifically, but perhaps the Noble Lord the Minister could tell us if any of the draft answers he has in his folder have been drafted by Deloitte consultants. Now, to be absolutely clear, I'm not, of course, saying that civil servants shouldn't consult outside experts. If there's a technical question from your Lordship's House, a civil servant consulting an expert, including an industry expert, is obviously reasonable. The question is where the direction and guidance is coming from. Has that been privatised as so much else? For the information of the Minister, I note that in the other place this morning, the Minister for Implementation said she would be looking into the Deloitte contracts. But this is also, of course, specifically a matter of concern for your Lordship's House, given it directly affects our proceedings. Now I turn to the regret motion from the Noble Lady Baroness Britton. I cannot believe that there is a member of your Lordship's House who would not support her expression of sorrow for the massive death toll, the swathe that's been cut through communities, particularly more disadvantaged communities. And can anyone really oppose regrets for the millions of self-employed who've been left penniless and scrabbling desperately to survive? Or the continuing, still unsolved problem of failure to provide the funds workers infected with the coronavirus or potentially exposed to it, denied the financial support they need to self-isolate? How can this regret motion not be supported? Were I physically in your Lordship's House, I'd be looking around the benches around me as I spoke. And I note the words in the regret motion that call on Her Majesty's Government to publish a comprehensive plan to manage the number of COVID-19 cases and any new variants. Compared to the chaotic slew of localised, highly confusing statutory instruments that flooded through your Lordship's House last autumn, we have got some way towards that, at least finally, with a national road out of lockdown, rather than the casual, it'll work out, wave of the hand from the Prime Minister. Ms Baroness Britton's motion indicates that's still lacking in detail, and particularly lacking a focus on vital ventilation issues. It's in the New York Times that I saw a detailed plan of how open windows and fans might be used to manage airflow in a classroom to minimise the risk of transmission. I've not seen similar from the government. Guidance urgently needed now that we know social distancing, screens and hand washing do not provide a COVID-safe work or social space. Only carefully managed ventilation and air filtration can do that. But I regret that my written questions on these issues have received scant answers. My Lords, the Green Group will be supporting Baroness Brinton's regret motion. We're also calling for an immediate inquiry into what's happened thus far. We need to understand the many things that have gone wrong so that we can strengthen resilience, tackle poverty, inequality, overcrowding and poor housing, set up our society to contain COVID and manage future threats in this age of shocks. Thank you, my Lords.